The year was 1901 and the Signor Moro Pansini, a building contractor, and his family had moved to a town hall near Ruvo Puglia in Italy. Big house. The house was old and needed work, though Mr. Pansini had the skills to improve it. Little did he and his family that the move was the start of a series of improbable and mysterious events. A few days after moving in, strange things began to happen. Some objects moved around, apparently no one in the family touched them. Quickly, however, the situation worsened. Articles were inexplicably thrown out the house, and found that even the crockery was broken. Mr. Pansini had two children, Alfredo and Paolo. Unfortunately, the poltergeist was not happy with the destruction of their belongings, and decided to take an interest in the young Alfredo, then only 7 years old. One afternoon, Alfredo was home. Suddenly fell into a trance, and began to speak and recite in French, Latin and Greek language he did not know or did not understand. His family was surprised by this turn of events. In the coming weeks, this episode repeated. Finally, in desperation, Mr. Alfredo Pansini sent to a local seminary. The strangeness stopped immediately. The peace and quiet continued for 3 years, and Pansini felt that perhaps the poltergeist had been exorcised by sending the young Alfredo to church school. In 1904, decided it was time to come home. Alfredo, after all, there were no reports of rarities in the seminary, and his house had been silent all this time. This would be an error of judgment. Alfredo, now 10 years old, returned home, and soon a new series of strangeness began to manifest itself, but also get involved, this time his younger brother, 8-year-old Paolo. On a wet morning, children and their parents decided to sail sticks in the channel outside his home. Mr. Pansini then went to his house, after making it clear that they should go home in 30 minutes. 30 minutes later, there was no sign of the boys. The Lord Pansini looking in the neighborhood, but found nothing. He was pretty upset about their attitudes. Upon returning home in a bad mood, he heard the phone ringing. It was quickly answered. The voice on the other end said he was the father Vanetti in the Capuchin convent in Malfatti, 30 miles away. He stated that the boys were there with him. How could the boys have traveled more than 30 miles in less than half an hour? When Mr. Pansini reached the convent, there awaited him in the reception hall. According to the monks, the boys arrived mysteriously and were in a deep hypnotic state. Mr. Pansini, confused by the unexplained event, took the kids home, and told them to stay in his room for the rest of the day. After seeing them in bed, closed the door behind him. A few minutes later he decided to see if they were there. To his surprise, they had disappeared from a locked room. At the same moment, 15 miles away, the brother of Mr. Pansini heard a knock at his door. When he opened the door, he found his nephews in the door, looking stunned and not knowing where they were. Again, they had moved through space, beyond the technology of the time. This, however, was not the end of their strange journeys. A later story tells of a fisherman sitting in his boat mending their nets. Suddenly and without warning, the Pansini brothers were in your boat a few kilometers offshore from the port of Valletta in the Mediterranean Sea. His parents were deeply concerned and asked the Bishop of Biton to help. Intrigued by the story, the bishop visited the family's home, and was taken to the living room. Mrs. Pansini called the two boys, and began telling the bishop of the problems and the strangeness that had been happening to the family. Suddenly and without warning, the two children disappeared from the room before the bishop. They had traveled again. Some time later, Alfredo began to exhibit other skills while in trance. He answered questions mentally through automatic writing. When people questioned the spirit, mentioned that it was responsible for the teleportation and dematerialization was through their bodies. Nobody could explain this strange phenomena. Italian scientists who studied the case suggested that the boys were moving when they were in trance, but forgot about it when they awoke. However, this does not explain the distances. Nor does it explain what several witnesses swore they saw, or the lack of witnesses who saw the boys on the road. What caused the teleportation of children? Did the children a special gift when they entered into a trance? Currently, scientists have managed to teleport atoms. Although the distances are small, scientists believe that teleportation over great distances in the future is promising. With this in mind, and we are all formed of atoms, is it possible that human beings have a special ability forgotten for thousands of years, able to travel great distances instantaneously, like these Italian children? Maybe.